Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Tuesday morning, political fighters. Welcome to the August 4th, 2026 edition of Choose Views. 773-763-9278 is the number. Find my show on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube. That's where we are. Also, you can email me at richard@wcpt820.com and follow me on all the socials under Choose Views. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. There you can get Choose Views featured interviews. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Patty Vasquez, driving it home. It's The Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath, Out Chicago, and our other shows and interviews. And also the evenings, got to stay plugged in. The Politics Bar, The Matt McNeil Show, and The Gailey Show. And when you make your way over to heartlandsignal.com, which is our digital platform, you'll get to see and read the various articles and posts that we have. And let's see what we have. This is an interesting one. 2 Wisconsin candidates face scrutiny over extramarital dating site accounts. So what's that all about? Wisconsin State Representative Pat Schneider, married for 40 plus years, used accounts on Adult Friend Finder, and Ashley Madison. So we're not denigrating those accounts. Those sites. That's their business. But they were using him for facilitating affairs until his 2016 election. Wow. His bio read, "I'm not changing my life. I just want to improve it to the tune of one woman." Interesting. It's happening on, quote, both sides of the aisle in terms of people in politics getting caught up in these crazy things. But it's the right that's the hypocrites about it, that we're better than you and our people are pure and we don't make any mistakes and we're the holy ones and we're the Christian right and all this other garbage. And it is garbage. And it's not even aspirational. It's just flat out garbage because they are playing this role of being better than everybody else, superior to everybody else, when in fact, that's not the case. And it shows itself. The Democrats aren't running around saying that these are things that we don't necessarily do politically. I'm saying the elected officials. Some have done things and gotten caught and, or caught, if caught's the word. When it's an abuse situation or a harassment situation, it's different. These sites, they are what they are, but just don't be a hypocrite about it. That's all I'm saying. It's almost like you want to say, hey, if you go to the site, but don't play the game that, you're better than everybody else because everybody else, if they do it, then they're wrong. I don't know. That's just kind of my, view of it. But you can find articles and posts like this at heartlandsignal.com, which is our digital platform. And also my interview with Wisconsin governor candidate Kelda Roy, calling out the Republicans who are outraged about Dr. Fauci and who refused to help people during the COVID-19 pandemic. They would rather have held up supplies and resources than helping people actually get through it. And so good clip there with Senator Kelda Roy, who's running for governor. And lots changed in that race in the last few days. On today's show, Charles Booker, 2026 candidate for U.S. Senate in Kentucky, will be with us in the 6:30 hour. So looking forward to talking to Charles again. He's been with us in the past. Margaret Donovan, attorney for Koskoff, and Bider, visiting clinical lecturer of law at Yale Law School and former assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Connecticut, an Army veteran, former JAG Advocate General, or Judge Advocate General, also known as JAG. And then Thom Hartmann will be with us in the 7:30 hour. As you know, Tom hosts the Thom Hartmann program weekdays 11 to 2 here on WCPT. And he's the author of the new book, Who Killed the American Dream, the greatest political crime ever told. So we'll be talking with Tom about his book and looking forward to chatting with him about a few other things that are going on. He might have a few thoughts here and there. So that's what's happening with our who our guests are today and who we're going to be chatting with. All right. My something to chew on segment is based on a little observation I made yesterday, and it's also part of our question of the day. So I was watching something yesterday on MS Now and was struck by something that that happened during one of the press goggles, one of the White House or Oval Office press meetings yesterday. And it kind of led me to a question that I'm curious where you guys land on this one. So what's a question of the day? And I really do want to get some feedback from you guys. If you were a White House press person, would you put it all on the line and push back when Donald Trump starts giving the bullcrap answers? When he starts to ramble on, you ask a question and he asks, like yesterday during this press meeting in the Oval Office, he asked each person that asked him a question, where are you from? Meaning, which media outlet are you from? And, you know, he would denigrate some and not others. Or he had some, you know, snarky or smart A comment to make to the person. And he really, this is where I was when I watched this. Young reporter from MS Now was there, and they were airing this. And I thought, wow. He asked the question, and Trump immediately, well, before he started to answer the question, he asked the young man, and I can't remember his name, but the point isn't his name, is more of the situation. He said, where are you from? And he told him where he was from, and he just started to slam MS Now. You're fake news. You're an awful reporter. Your business stinks. You know, you changed your name because he just went down this path for about 30 seconds of just trash talking the young man from MS Now and MS Now at large. And I was sitting there watching this thinking, why does the network keep airing this while they're being trashed by Donald Trump? I thought, you know, guys, just cut it off. Just go to commercial break or go back to the studio and let the in-studio hosts, you know, talk about something else. I don't want to say this and sound disrespectful, but it was almost like they were, you know, pointing the gun at themselves in some ways. Like they're going to let him trash talk you live while you're airing this coverage on your network. There was something that wasn't congruent in my brain with that. Like, I would think that the studio manager, the director, the floor director, the production, whomever that's in the control room would have said, you know, cut back to the studio. But I thought about it, and I was like, okay, I know why they didn't do. I shouldn't say I know why. I have a presumption as to why they didn't do that, and that's very possibly because the C-suite is concerned about optics, and they didn't want to be perceived as X, Y, and Z. I don't know this, but my instinct, my first thought was the person in the control room should say, let's go back to the studio. We don't need to be, you know, trash talk like that live while we're airing it on our network. And so that's when I came to the thought, if you were a White House press person, would you put it all on the line and push back when Donald Trump starts giving you the bullcrap answers and rambling on like this? Like, just interrupt them and say, hold on a second, I'm not here. I mean, what was happening with me is I was getting riled up going, hold on a second, I'm not here to have you trash my network. I'm here to have you answer my question. And that's the only person that seems to have done that with any sort of, you know, I'm going to say consistency or regularity is Caitlin Collins. She's done it a handful of times, and you know, we give her kudos for doing that, because every time she does it, and he talks about her not smiling and this other garbage, which is so sexist. And the other women in the press room that don't stand up for her when he says that should be ashamed of themselves, and the guys as well. But again, if you were a White House press person, would you put it all on the line, risk your access to whatever, and push back when Donald starts to give you these, BS answers? Just want to know what you guys think. You can send us a text at 773-763-9278. You can call. By all means, give us a shout. We'll squeeze you in today, and Mike will grab your comments and make your way over to our Facebook page and leave your thoughts there as well. Let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Chew's Views. All right, guys, welcome back to Chew's Views. If you are just tuning in, I'm Richard Chew. A couple of quick Chew's Views news items on this August 4th, 2026. Looks like the box office did pretty well. $430 million weekend box office breaks an all-time record with Spider-Man, Brand New Day, and The Odyssey kind of leading the pack, with both summer blockbusters amassing combined $430 million in domestic sales, according to Variety. The previous weekend was held by Avengers Endgame, that meaning the weekend record, which earned $402 million. And fourth was Spider-Man. This is the fourth Spider-Man flick starring Tom Holland, who also broke records on its own. So there you go. Marriott's profit takes a hit on conflicts resulting in the Middle East. They missed their Wall Street profit expectations for the second quarter thanks to the depressed travel to the Middle East caused by the war in Iran. Revenue rose 5% to $7.07 billion, missing forecast of $7.19 billion. Visa is buying fraud detection platform BioCatch for $2.4 billion. The Visa giant is buying the fraud plotting platform BioCatch. It's the latest in a series of fraud tech and infrastructure acquisitions for Visa, which the Wall Street Journal says has spent $13 billion to shore up vulnerabilities over the past 4 years. BioCatch uses AI and behavioral biometrics, quote, to differentiate bots from real users. That's a great use for AI. And the acquisition underscores the need for a higher bar for fraud detection. Battery startup Base Power nabs $1 billion in fresh funding. Dude, you're getting a Dell is taking on a new meaning. Base Power, co-funded by Dell Computers, just secured $1 billion in funding, lifting its valuation to $13 billion. A 3-year-old firm is building tens of thousands of batteries in residential backyards, hoping to become America's next big power company. We'll keep you posted on that story. And donors balk at colleges rating their endowments to pay bills. Smaller colleges are increasingly dipping into their endowments to get bills paid, and many donors are outraged by what they see as a misuse of funds they've contributed for different purposes. An estimated 200 private colleges borrowed from restricted endowments last year, up from 131 just 4 years earlier, while younger Americans feeling skeptical about the value of college and enrollments expected to drop 13% in the next 15 years. Schools may be alienating donors at the worst possible time. And last but not least, homeowners associations are cracking down on rising unpaid dues. They're tightening their financial policies as they face rising operational costs and increasing delinquency rates. With foreclosure filings tied to unpaid HOA dues surging nearly 40% in the first quarter, many associations are pursuing more aggressive collection tactics, moving faster to legal action instead of offering informal repayment flexibility. HOAs are facing mounting financial pressure as rising operating costs coincide with stricter safety concerns introduced in the wake of the 2020 Surfside condominium collapse in Florida. You guys remember that. The underlying part of those three stories, those last three stories, what they all have in common is the rising cost, whether it be tariffs, whether it be the war in Iran, whether it be subsidies that many people have been able to use to cover some of their medical bills. These are all things that have been that have had an impact as a result of this Trump administration. The tariffs, more costs, more operating costs, more delivery costs. Fuel, that's coming out of people's pocket. They may not be able to make some of the payments on their association dues. All these are tied to what's currently going on with this current administration. So let us not forget that these costs are directly a problem, or are a problem that's directly tied to the fault and the incompetence and the corruption of, if you will, this administration. So there you go. Today on Live, Local, and Progressive, Joan Esposito will be taking your calls and then talking to Julia Metro, disability reporter from Mother Jones. She'll discuss the recent article, California Does Medicare Home Care Well. They're being punished for it. Ray Long, retired Chicago Tribune investigative reporter. Peter Dominick, news commentator, stand-up comic, and host of the Stand Up with Peter Dominick podcast. That's Live, Local, and Progressive, weekdays 2 to 5 here on WCPT, AM 820, heartlandsignal.com, and TuneIn. For my listeners, our WCPT listeners, tonight on Driving It Home, Patty Vasquez will be joined by Morgan Coghill, former candidate for the Illinois 10th Congressional District and founder of Northern Illinois Progressives. Steve Minchuk, president of Northern Indiana Area Federation of Labor, and Corbin Trent, Democratic strategist and publisher of America's Undoing on Substack. Also find him at afightworthhaving.com. That's Patty Vasquez, weekdays 5 to 7 here on WCPT, Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And tomorrow on Choose Views, my guests will include William Hazelgrove, author of Camp Mystic Flood, a story of tragedy and heroism. And we'll also be talking with our good friend Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63. So, as you guys remember, Camp Mystic is a story about the 27 girls and counselors that went missing during the July 4th, 2025 flood. So we will get into that tomorrow. And, of course, catch the show on Facebook Live. You can catch all of our episodes, full featured interviews and full episodes are available at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, and Amazon Music. So make your way over there and share that with a friend. But we'll give you some reminders about the shows and what's coming up a little bit later in this show. All right. Today's segment of Something to Chew On. I said earlier that media, would you put it on the line in our question of the day? And Miss Now, they're getting slammed by Trump during the White House press briefing. Should they have cut him off and, cut off that part of the show and gone back to the studio? That's my thought. Because what's happening is, in my observation, public trust in corporate media has become strained, and it's become strained because it's driven by concerns over political bias. And sometimes the bias is because networks, they stay too long on a particular topic, or they stay too long on a particular person. RFK is a good example. Right now, he's spewing all this garbage, right? But the networks are covering it, and that's creating a certain amount of strain by consumers. It's creating, in some ways, a kind of an echo chamber, because we're just hearing the corporate media have people on that are spewing lies and spewing garbage and whatever else you want to call it. And because of that, it's adding to the pain that a lot of people are having to go through when it comes to what's real and what's not. Corporate media outlets are shifting their approach to appease political power. And that's somewhat due to the financial pressures that they're feeling, because a lot of the advertising and marketing dollars and sponsor dollars are going to other outlets than the traditional corporate media outlets. And that's in print. You've seen it with what's happened with some of the print media that's been bought and then resold and kind of whittled down, and reporters leaving. And then there's some legal vulnerabilities that are taking place right now, because you've got an administration that's attacking corporate media. So when you kind of mix that all together, they really have leaned into the model of profit over confrontation. And that's why I asked the question earlier, would you put it all on the line and further call out Donald Trump, get into a little bit of a tiff with him verbally? You're in the White House, you're in the Oval Office, or if he's on the plane, or heading to the helicopter. Is that going to happen? I don't know. But they should treat Donald Trump with more rigorous accountability. I believe they should push back. There should be some institutional courage that comes from those who have the access. If you have the access, you should use it, not to just keep the access. I believe you should use the access to press him and other members of the GOP when they start to go down that path with statements like, I didn't ask you that question. Could you go back and answer the question that I asked you? We don't need you to ramble on about something that we didn't ask you to talk about. Be more willing to put it on the line and reject the normalization that's taking place inside of the industry. Be more aggressive in verification, like ask these questions. Where did that come from? What facts do you have to back that up? How can you tell us, how can you prove to us that that's legal, what you're saying? The other two things before we go to a break is defend press freedom. And when I think about that, you want to make sure that you are defending those that are around you. I believe if you have that access, use it to your advantage. And I said this a little bit earlier about people standing up for and supporting Caitlin Collins and others when they, get into the cauldron. Be willing to stand up for your colleagues. Maybe even consider some collective boycotts. Maybe consider denying some of the politicians on the left or the right, but certainly right now it's the right, it's the GOP, it's the White House, denying them free airtime. In other words, just coming on and blowing smoke. And then I believe there should be some solidarity, as I said, with the networks, with all the outlets. They should start to say, we have to work together to get the truth from the White House and others who we interview. That's how I see it. And maybe last but not least, make access to the networks be conditional on accountability. If they can't verify or prove what they said on your network, then maybe you shouldn't allow them to be on. Maybe you should say, unless you can be truthful about that and you can prove what you just said, we aren't going to have you back. They probably want to get it right because they want to come back. So there you go. Something to chew on. We're going to take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more Chew's Views. All right, guys, welcome back to Chew's Views. If you're just tuning in, I'm Richard Chew. I want to know what you guys think about the media, the corporate media, and how they're covering stories. And our first guest this morning is definitely someone that's had to have a few tussles with the media and to get his message out there and let people know what he really stands for, rather than the, I guess you could say, the garbage that oftentimes is presented. Charles Booker is a former state representative in Kentucky and is now the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate in the great state of Kentucky. Is back with us again. Good morning, Charles, and welcome back to Chew's Views.
Good morning, brother. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to see you, man. I mean, the last time we talked, some of the messages I got from people like, you two are yucking it up too much over there. But that's what you got. That's what happens when you have a guy that understands the importance of narrowing the gap from the hood to the holler. Let's start there. Let's start by talking about your campaign and talk about what you're trying to do to bridge the quote unquote gap of so much that's happened over the years in Kentucky. Let's talk about what's happening with the campaign. Bring us up to speed.
Well, something very powerful is happening in this campaign. As I shared with you and your listeners before, we've really been doing a lot of organizing for years, not around party, but around the issues, around the challenges that we all collectively face. And Kentucky being one of the poorest and sickest states, there's a lot of common bonds and common struggles. And we've have really been mobilizing around that. We actually just had a big political event this past weekend here in Kentucky called Fancy Farm. And in a lot of ways, this is the start to the political season. This is in the heart of Western Kentucky, actually the furthest point in the Purchase region. And people typically refer to it nowadays as hardcore Republican. And we went there with a lot of Booker supporters and really showed that, something different is happening. This, again, is not about party. We're in areas that Trump dominated, and we're seeing more support where folks are vocal with it, not because of my party, but because they know that I'm standing for them. And that's put us in a very real position to win a race that a lot of people aren't really paying attention to yet, but
Yeah.
more news is breaking. I think more people are starting to pay attention.
Well, they're paying attention to if a particular person is alive or not, and that's important that we pay attention to that. But it is part of the set when it comes to this race. So, Charles, let me ask you this question, and this is I have my thoughts about it, so I'm just going to ask it as best I can. What's it like for you as a candidate in the state of Kentucky, as a statewide race, to go from a community that, for lack of better words, visually looks like you and me, to a community that may not look like you, that has historically voted, in many ways motivated to not allow folks that look like you and me to be able to move forward and to have the ability to not just survive, but to thrive, as the phrase goes. But to go to those communities and to look somebody in the eye and say, listen, I know you may not think I'm the guy or, the gal, but I'm not the guy that you might think would represent you. And I know that historically you may have voted in a different direction. And oftentimes it's in opposition to someone that looks like me. But I'm here to help make your life better, be damned the skin color. I just maybe answered my own question, but talk to us about what that's like and what results or feedback you're getting from people because I know you're having those conversations.
Yeah, I've had them. I've had them for years, and I'll tell you, first of all, it's a spiritual journey. This has been a divine mission for me, because I've been in spaces I never thought I'd be in. Confederate flags in the yards, in the black jockeys in the yards, and the figurines and all of that. And I've been in places that have been called sundown towns, having conversations that have really opened my eyes, and I'm excited to help tell the story because I believe it can reveal some truth. One of the very powerful things that I've seen in my organizing and then in this campaign is that the silos that exist, they aren't as impenetrable as we may want to believe. Now, there are those who voted for Trump or have voted Republican and see it through a lens that wants to erase my humanity. There are those. The majority of folks I talk to do not look at it that way. It wasn't really in the realm of consideration that what they were doing was actively hurting someone else. Mm-hmm. They were genuinely, in so many of these conversations, of folks saying, I'm trying to make a decision on how to get my job back. Mm-hmm. Trump didn't bring the jobs back. Trump said he was going to make life more affordable. He said he was going to drain the swamp. And there were some blind spots, obviously, but there was a lot of humanity in there that when I showed up, they were just relieved that someone cared enough to show up for them.
Right.
And less about what's the color of my skin. And I know, like I said, racism is very real. The hatred and division is very real, but so are the opportunities to build. And we just need a little courage to come out of our comfort zones. And again, this was divinely led, but I'm glad I listened because we have a coalition that the country needs to see, that the world needs to see, and winning a race like this, rooted in community in a way that has folks that are, up in the hollers and, farmers and organizing with people in the hood. It speaks to the fact that humanity still persists and prevails if we lean in.
Yeah, one of the things, and thank you for that. And it's a question that I think needs to be asked more and more, as not as one that says we're leaning into the negative, but we're identifying that reality. And then when we identify that reality, it actually empowers us to be able to push past it, push past some of the racist or sexist or biased thinking that has been out there and may in some ways have guided people's voting decisions. We know that's a reality. To say that's not, I think it's irresponsible. And so I just wanted to ask you that question because you're a candidate, an African-American man running in Kentucky, which ironically, maybe is the word we'll use, has a history of some really great leadership from Democrats over the years, and you're stepping into that spotlight again. I mean, we've got great Democratic leaders there, and you're hopefully going to be one of the next in that space. Talk about the history of great Democratic leadership and the current good leadership that we have in the state.
Well, that is so important to mention because it is often just quickly said, oh, well, Kentucky is a Republican state, it's Trump country and so on and so forth. Democrats ran Kentucky up until like the last 15 years. And I mean everything, majority in both chambers in the legislature, all the constitutional offices. We've had Wendell Ford in the U.S. Senate. We celebrate a lot of leadership across Kentucky where there were Democratic strongholds that are now Republican-led. But as you mentioned, we still have a Democratic governor who is one of the most popular governors in the country. This is less about party, and it has been more about who's going to show up for the people of Kentucky. But it's also been a result of falling asleep at the wheel in a lot of ways, where leadership did not continue to do the type of organizing and infrastructure building that makes people know that they're a part of the process, that their voices are accounted for. And honestly, Mitch McConnell, as much as so much of the calamity in this country and globally now can be tracked back to him, one of the things he did in Kentucky was build infrastructure. He went in communities that had been ignored or that were ran by Democrats who may have fallen asleep at the wheel and found support from people who were looking to be listened to. Mm-hmm. And he was known over the years as someone who would bring resources into communities that had been, in a lot of ways, felt they were ignored and forgotten about and taken for granted. And the pendulum has swung back in a lot of ways.
Right.
And I've essentially taken pages from Mitch McConnell's old playbook because he forgot it a long time ago.
Well, and that's the thing. That as much as he saw the opening, I mean, yes, he saw that opening. He saw that we had slept at the wheel, had fallen asleep at the wheel, and he took advantage of that. But then he forgot and got extraordinarily comfortable and he became detrimental because he was pushing things that were national issues that were negatively impacting the same people that he had once helped. So this is where your smarts and your political understanding has come in and been, one of your superpowers is to recognize that Mitch not only, like you said, his old playbook was a great one, but he forgot to turn back to page one to see what helped him get the power that he was able to accumulate. I like how you put that too about many of the things that are happening, not just there locally, but nationally and globally, come down to one dude. And that's crazy to think about. This guy has had that kind of impact on things that have affected the entire world. That's insane.
It really is. And it speaks to how when we are not allowing democracy to thrive, when we are ignoring regular people, when we're ignoring places like Kentucky, we create these vacuums and these spaces where folks can be exploited. Our politics can be exploited. And we're seeing it. We are seeing it in a very unprecedented way now, which means we got to get back to what we know is the truth of what works. And it's always back to community. It's the power of the civil rights movement. It's the power of any movement. It's us finding our collective strength and our collective voices and lifting it up together. So I'm just doing what I've known has worked throughout history, and we're showing it again this time.
Charles, we're going to take a little bit of a break. When we come back, I want to talk about some great things that have been happening and then what you're doing to continue to pull the coalition together. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Chew's Views. All right, guys, welcome back to Chew's Views. If you're just tuning in, I'm Richard Chew, and we're talking with Charles Booker, who is the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate in Kentucky. Charles, thanks for being with us this morning. You received a really, really they're all meaningful, but a really, really meaningful endorsement from the American Federation of Government Employees recently. Talk about that, what that means, and how, just candidly, you're going to leverage that to continue to build this coalition that you're building.
Absolutely. And you know, I'm so grateful for all the support that's been coming in locally, statewide, nationally. And you mentioned the government employees. We've gotten a lot of support from organized labor, but this endorsement within the last few days has been really big because it helps us tell a story that is really at the heart of why we are in this situation. These are a lot of folks, regular people who have committed their life to serving their communities, our TSA employees, folks who do a lot of great work throughout our country that are a lot of unsung heroes. And the way that the Trump administration came in, and particularly through DOGE and this notion of addressing waste, fraud, and abuse, and really what they were doing is throwing out hardworking people who were helping the government function, who were actually serving the needs of the very people who elected Trump, and people see it. And now the frustration has grown, and it actually goes back to another question that you initially asked of, you know, me going into a lot of these rooms where, you know, it may not be expected that they might sit down with someone quite like me. The scales are falling off the eyes of a lot of people, and they're seeing how they're being crushed, and they're like, wait, this is not what we asked for. And so, you know, while at the same time a lot of us may have seen that this was coming, I'm really grateful that Voices in Organized Labor and our government employees are speaking up now to say that we realize that we cannot go on this way, and we have to find leaders who are going to fight for working people. And that's my whole platform. And so I'm going to continue to tell that story. And I even said it at Fancy Farm. Look, even if you boo while I'm on that stage, because it's a raucous environment, there's cheers, there's boos, but I made it clear that Democrat, Republican, Independent, regardless of what your party is, if you're tired of working people being screwed over and squeezed out, I'm fighting for you. And the message is breaking through.
Tell us more about Fancy Farm. I mean, I'm sure more of our listeners all over the country want to know a little bit more about that event and how that came about.
You know, Fancy Farm is a very historic event here, over a century of political stump speeches. It's sort of like the March Madness of political speeches. You know, the Super Bowl, if you will, because this is the one space where all the candidates, Democrats and Republicans, are on the same stage. Their supporters are there, and it's almost no holds barred. You can say the things that typically you don't say because it may not be as politically correct, but it's within the realm of jest.
It's kind of like a homecoming and barbecue fest all rolled into one, right?
Yeah, it's just one of those those family moments where everyone gets together and they sort of joke on each other, and there's a little bit of truth in those jokes. Fancy Farm has been like that, and everyone comes ready to cheer on their candidate and to jeer or even boo their opponent. But the thing that was really powerful with me being on that stage, because of course I'm the target. All the Republicans couldn't wait to have a word about me. But when I got up to speak, a lot of the Republican supporters, well, although they started booing, they got quiet. Mm-hmm. When they heard me say, even if you boo, I'm going to fight for you to get quality health care. Mm. And if you're sick and tired of the swamp, stop voting for it. Mm. Let's stand together. And to see the looks on the faces where they weren't expecting me to come to tell them how much I love them and how much I believe we can change things together. So this is a new day in our politics here, but it's years in the making, and I'm excited about it. It was an honor to be on that stage.
Well, and I guess it had to be the honor. Obviously, had to be there, but it also had to be somewhat inspiring to you and motivating to you, maybe self-assuring, reassuring to you that you could have that moment where you struck a chord, where you say, "Hey, listen." Whether you're booing for me or you never voted Democratic in the past and et cetera, I'm here because I'm tired of seeing folks like you who may be booing me have to suffer and struggle in the state that I love. That's got to be pretty powerful to be able to stand there and have people, because if they weren't booing, then they were probably listening.
That's right. That's right. Well, the truth can cut through the noise if we have the courage enough to speak it. And I also took the opportunity to make it clear who my opponent is, and that's a big part of why we're going to win this too, because my opponent is really the spawn of Mitch McConnell and
Andy Barr. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you up, but let's talk a little bit about your opposition and your strength over Andy Barr.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, because this is a big part of how we're going to win this as well. It's not just the work we've done; it's who I'm up against is really the worst form of a status quo politician that nobody likes nowadays. He's one of those he was once a moderate Republican, and he's trying to rebrand himself as hardcore Trumper, make America great again, and it's not believable. It's phony, and people see through it. And his whole message in this campaign, he's not talking about the issues and 35 rural hospitals potentially being closed due to these cuts, or the tariffs that are crushing small businesses and our farmers. He's not talking about the issues. He put out an ad on TV saying that people are supposedly saying that it's a sin to be white. That was his ad on TV. And, I called it out on the stage that, no, it's not a sin to be who God created you to be. It's not a sin to stand in your faith, but it ought to be a sin to be that desperate. And people see that mess, and they're tired of it. And we've had enough of that mess out of Mitch McConnell, so we're not going to have 6 more years of it.
I love it for all of us of any particular stripe and community that we're all a part of across the country. I love it when somebody uses the word mess as a replacement for another 4-letter word.
That's exactly right.
And you know what I'm talking about. Charles, I really always enjoy talking with you because I know that you're one of those guys that is from us, not being us as black folks, but from the community of people that are working so doggone hard to get ahead and to stay ahead and to bring some folks with them. So on an individual basis, that's just great to see you continuing to march down this road. And I will be one of your biggest cheerleaders if you were to win this election. I mean that from my heart, because I know how much it means to you, to your family, but in the family of Kentucky. How is the business community responding? Individuals are coming to the light, if you will, but how is the business community responding to what you're presenting to the state?
That's also been one of the powerful parts about this, is that we're building a campaign that's rooted in community, that's talking about the issues, that is not running away from inequities and injustice, but at the same time, we're sending a message that we want a Kentucky that is prosperous. We want our businesses to thrive. We want our farmers to be successful and to not have to go without the health care they need. We want our factory workers to have their benefits and to have true living wages. And we want our companies here to thrive and make sure those dollars are circulating in their communities. And because of the war in Iran, that has jacked up costs for so many businesses here, the tariffs that have been just thrown around globally because Trump's having a temper tantrum, and they're hurting farmers here in Kentucky. They're hurting our signature industries like bourbon. And they have seen in me someone who is coming to the table to say, how can I help you? How can I be a voice for you? And my opponent has turned his back. His only message is how close can he get to Donald Trump? And even for people who voted for Trump, they're looking for someone who's going to fight for them, not just try to kiss up to Donald Trump, especially when he's very visibly screwing us. Mm-hmm. And so being able to reflect a coalition of partners in the business community and still show that we're centering grassroots leadership and that they are not exclusive is important in how we move forward as a country, because it cannot be the people versus business, the people versus profit. We're trying to profit as well. And to take care of the people is a sustainable economic policy. And we're speaking that truth.
How are your, I guess we'll say some of the Democratic candidates that ran against you in the primary, where are they landing right now in terms of supporting you? I know that Amy McGrath has been on our show a number of times. And, you know, we as I've said, across the board, whether it's in Michigan, whether it's in Texas, whether it's in South Carolina, whether it's in Kentucky, whether it's in Maine, at the end of the day, I'm lining up with who our nominee is so that we can get him or her, he or she, across the finish line to win the seat. But how are your former, I guess you could say, competitors lining up when it comes to supporting you?
You know, you're so very right, and we need each other, and we're in this together. But I'm excited to share that the folks that I stood on the opposite side of the podium in debates, and we had vigorous debates. And of course, you mentioned Amy McGrath. They've endorsed my campaign and have been very helpful. And, you know, one of the things that's really exciting for me in this, because there were two really remarkable women running in the primary, Amy McGrath, of course, and Colonel Pam Stevenson, and both of them with their experience in the military and their experience in leadership, not only in Kentucky, but beyond, knowing that we're locking arms together, it's just showing how much stronger we are when we can stand unified. And so I'm proud of that. We need more of that in our politics.
Yeah.
You know, because I think it's often said that if you have policies or positions that are classified or described as more progressive, and these labels get thrown around, that there are these rifts, and we're pushing past the division. We're in this together. We need each other, and they're on the front line with me, so I'm excited.
Yeah, they are two extremely great, strong, hard-fighting women, and we all are honored and proud to have them as part of the team, and they keep fighting. And Amy's a good friend of the show, and she's going to be down with you. I can tell you that, as you know from your own personal experience with her. But she's out there fighting every day, and you know that's what we want to continue to see from all Democrats. Last words: how can folks find you? How can they get involved with your campaign? I'm the dotted line guy. I don't care if they're in Oregon or if they're in Orlando. We need to give the Democrats that are running in any state, any election, so that we can do what you just said. How can folks find you, Charles?
Absolutely. Please go to charlesbooker.org, sign up to volunteer, make a donation or two, and help us build out. And if you're questioning whether this race is of significance to the country, look no further than Mitch McConnell. All the questions swirling around Mitch McConnell right now, we know if we flip Kentucky, when we flip Kentucky, we are flipping the U.S. Senate. Let's clean up this mess together.
Let's clean up this mess. Stated by Charles Booker. It's good to see you. I'm so glad you're doing well. We got you back. I promise you that. We'll have you back on again to keep pushing the work that you're doing so that we can flip this seat. Stay safe, Charles. We look forward to talking to you again soon, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Good to see you. Bye now. All right, guys, quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Chew's Views.
You're listening to Chew's Views with Richard Chew.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in this morning. Make sure that you are catching Joan Esposito live, local, and progressive this afternoon, 2 to 5. And then this evening from 5 to 7, the great Patty Vasquez driving it home. Make sure you are tuning in. And listen, we talk about our guest. Thanks to Charles Booker for being with us in his Senate run in Kentucky. Support him, help him if you believe in what we're trying to all fight for. So that our next guest doesn't have to fight so doggone hard to keep us posted on what's happening with some of the legal maneuvers that this administration is trying to do. If we have a Senate, if we have the House and the Senate, it takes a little pressure off of folks like our guest, Margaret Donovan. And her resume, if you extend your arm out, her resume is like that long because she does everything. She's been doing everything for a long time. Former captain in the Judge Advocate General Corps, known as JAG, U.S. Attorney for the District of Connecticut, lecturer, all the rest. Margaret Donovan, good morning and welcome back to Chew's Views.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, listen. Obviously, your work is just so important for all of us right now, and how you've been, as I use the phrase, standing in the void to make sure that we are represented and we have a legal voice that helps us understand some of the maneuvers that not only this administration and its cabinet are trying to do, but frankly, so many members of the GOP, depending on when they're being called into question. So thank you for that. And I mean it for so many people who don't know about the work that you do. It's important. It's important to have representation and to have your kind of strength and experience. But tell us, I know that the topic of the day right now is what's going on with this Todd Blanche nomination and this Todd Blanche appointment, if you will. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is just like watching a slow-moving train wreck. So basically, a couple months ago, the president sued himself in district court and federal court in Florida. There's a case called Trump versus IRS. And so the background of that case is as follows.
So, Margaret, can I
yeah.
ask you a question from a legal standpoint? Help people understand. Okay, because this is the thing that's been
Yeah.
like scratching my head. It was filed in Florida. So from a
Right.
jurisdiction standpoint, help us understand why Florida rather than Virginia or New York.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know what? That's a really good point, Richard, because I just sort of like flew right to the facts of the case. But actually, simply the inception of the case is pretty remarkable. It was filed in Florida because under federal law, you can have what's called venue in a place where you reside. And of course, Mar-a-Lago is in the Southern District of Florida. And so the president could basically choose from several different venues. In fact, both of the ones that you just listed probably would have sufficed. But he went to, I think, what he believed would have been a favorable district in Southern Florida. And the case is unusual. You know, that part in itself is not unusual. It's quite common for plaintiffs to file in the districts where they live. What is unusual is that he, as I said, is suing himself. His personal lawyers filed a case on his behalf against the IRS. And it was for basically trying to, so he says, vindicate the disclosure of his tax records from several years ago. The problem is he was already vindicated because the disclosure of his tax records occurred from a contractor who had been working with IRS. And that person was criminally prosecuted in a very public criminal trial as a victim. Then Citizen Trump had representation. I believe Alina Habba, who's the former U.S. Attorney of New Jersey, was representing him at the time. And so that case is basically already played out. And so what this became is basically a straw man to basically extract a settlement from the government for the benefit of the president. And if that sounds confusing to you, it's because it is, and that's not the way lawsuits typically work.
Because
the government can't.
A lot of
Yeah.
people. This is why I'm glad I wanted to start there so we would have some time for you to kind of dig into the background. A lot of people don't realize that that's what the basis of, or what gave him standing in the first place. A lot of people out there that have been interviewed, and you've seen a lot of the sort of on the street interviews, people think that that the Biden administration leaked Donald Trump's tax returns. That's where a lot of what I'm hearing. A lot of people think that it came from the federal government that actually leaked his tax returns, and that's giving him the standing, when in fact, that's not what actually happened, right?
No, it was a contractor, and that person was prosecuted under the Biden administration.
Right.
So, like, this is a really, I guess, important piece in the information war here of like the idea that the president is somehow entitled to this. And in fact, as you know, I'll fast forward a little bit, but basically, because there were not what we call adverse parties in the suit, which means normally when you file a lawsuit, two people are fighting over something. Here, the president and his administration basically just created a straw man in this dispute and, you know, filed something in court and then very quickly settled it. In fact, the so-called opposing party, like the regular government attorneys that would usually respond when the IRS gets sued, never even responded to the suit. They never even made a filing in the case. which meant that when they settled, the judge kind of had no way to disapprove of the settlement or really intervene at all. And so what happened eventually was there were a group of former judges who filed what's called an amicus brief, which is basically almost like a third party coming in to intervene in a court case and say like, whoa, 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 like either they may have an interest there, and in that case, they would formally intervene in the suit. Or in this case, they basically said, look, we're just a friendly outsider to the court, and we want to inform the court that there's probably fraud going on here. And the reason, there were a few reasons for why you might suspect that, but one of them is because the claims that the Trump administration was bringing against itself had far outrun the statute of limitations for those claims, which means that any normal administration would have gotten sued and would have immediately sent a team of lawyers to reject the suit and save the taxpayer money by not paying out an unnecessary settlement. And so basically, on its face from the jump, the case was completely bogus. And yet you have the Trump administration basically entering into this like historic settlement that you would never see those numbers. We're talking about billions of dollars, right? $1.776 billion. This historic settlement for something that had already been adjudicated. And that is kind of the basis of the anti-weaponization fund. Basically, the Trump administration said, well, I am going to be so generous here, and my $1.776 billion settlement is going to be basically donated to create this anti-weaponization fund. Well, what that means is that tax money that would normally go to victims, like that settlement fund in the Department of Justice, that's usually used for, you know, I'm just going to give a random example. Like you get hit by a postal truck and you sue the federal government because the U.S. Postal Service, you know, ran you over and gave you a serious injury. That money usually goes to those people, right? That's like a fund that the government can use to settle claims against it. Or in use of force investigations, you know, the sort of standard lawsuits that you might see against the federal government. And so when Congress created the pot of money from which the anti-weaponization fund would be drawn, they absolutely were not thinking, let's give this to the people who were beating up police and trying to kill us, basically. And yet that is where it's going. And so if you kind of want to think about it at a very personal level, when you see that money leave your paycheck every 2 weeks when you get paid, the government is basically saying, yeah, that's not up to Congress to decide where that goes anymore. That's up to me, Donald Trump, and I'm going to give that money, that your tax, to my political allies. And the sort of darkest version of it is that he's funding a militia. When January 2029 hits again, his supporters will be better funded, better organized, better equipped. And that is because the president will have stolen from the taxpayers in order to give them the money in the form of this bogus settlement. And oddly, Richard, there are like 49 senators who were totally okay with that. So it is like
it's breathtaking.
Yeah.
Margaret, I didn't mean to cut you off there. It's breathtaking. Yeah. It's just breathtaking because I love how you, and this is why you are such a powerful voice, an important voice right now. I love how you broke that down to every 2 weeks when you get paid. Because sometimes when we talk about kitchen table issues and talking to people on their level, sometimes we miss something as practical as that. All of us do. We're all susceptible to that. Every couple of weeks when you get paid, some of that money that you didn't get went into Donald Trump's ability to write a check to a guy or a gal that may have harmed somebody that you know that worked at the Capitol as one of the Capitol police officers or many other people. That's literally how real this is. And so I appreciate you breaking it down that way. Margaret, take a tiny breath. We're going to take a little bit of a break and come back, and I'm going to give you the time right back to you like we're running a relay so you can keep us going.
Okay.
The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Chew's Views and, of course, Margaret Donovan. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Chew's Views. If you're just tuning in, I'm Richard Chew, and we're talking with Margaret Donovan, who is, I like to use certain words to describe people, legendary, and a voice that we need right now more than ever to break things down. She made the description of this case and this conversation very, very simple for us to understand, put it in bite-sized pieces, as the phrase goes. Margaret, thanks for being with us this morning. Let's talk a little bit more about how literal this is. I mean, I thought about the fact that yesterday Jeanine Pirro said that, they're going to drop this case with regard to the guy that they said, ripped up the reflecting pool. Okay.
Former United States Olympian. Yeah.
Right. And so I look at that and I think, okay, so technically, although it won't happen this way, he would be someone that would be eligible based on how they're trying to define this weaponization fund to receive some remuneration because the government was weaponized against him. And if you drop the case, tell us why you typically drop cases, Margaret.
Well, when you're a prosecutor, you drop a case when you don't have one. But, ideally, as a federal prosecutor, you never, and I'm a former federal prosecutor, as I know you know.
You don't bring it if you got it.
You don't bring it. You really just don't bring it. It's not you don't charge and then hope the evidence materializes in, the weeks after you charge somebody. This is a life-changing event to charge somebody with a crime. And not to mention that the government, they were doing a full court press across both the cabinet officials and their mouthpieces online saying how they're going to throw the book at this guy and he's an enemy of the country and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out actually he's totally innocent and they didn't have any evidence of this at all. I mean, this is, we kind of saw that we're headed to this. We saw it happen with, of course, former FBI Director James Comey, former Attorney General Letitia James. And so you see these bogus cases being brought, but this one is kind of scary because this is really just a regular guy. I mean, he's an amazing American and I know his attorneys well and he's quite well represented. But this is just, there were 3 other people who were also charged and their cases were just dropped quietly last night as well. These are just regular people now. Like now we're just picking up people off the street, throwing federal charges at them because it supports a narrative that kind of would otherwise embarrass the president, which is that actually
don't drive SUVs on the reflecting pool.
Yeah. Maybe don't have a random contractor who did your swimming pool, design a national monument. So, that case is just really crazy. And to your point, would that person be eligible for the weaponization fund? Well, the terms of the fund were basically extending back only 5 years, which is convenient because it's saying only things that happened in the Biden administration. And I would say that anybody who thinks, because as you know, I represent many clients who have been targeted by the government right now. And I think anybody who thinks, well, I'll be clever and I was targeted by the Trump administration, so I'm going to apply to the weaponization fund. I would warn them really sort of gravely against doing that because for all I'll just use an example. I don't represent this person, but I'm using it as an example. If Attorney General James was like, well, I was, the victim of weaponization, why don't I go make a claim? The Trump administration could very well just say, granted, here's $5 and you can never sue us again. Davey Hearn could do that. The Olympian could do that. He could go try to make a claim and the Trump administration should say, sure, but now you can't sue us. We're going to give you exactly $1 for your claim. And for these January 6th protesters, we're going to give anywhere between 5 and 10 million. So, thankfully, well, I'll use some caution here. Attorney General Blanche, soon to be Attorney General Blanche, has claimed that the weaponization fund is dead. But I have to say, and I don't want to be too doomsdayer here, but I have some reluctance. You just tossed the baton back to me. I caught it. Margaret Donovan has some legitimate reservations. And in the words of Richard Chew, I think that they've got all kinds of trap doors
that they've created so that they can say that the wording that was in this most recent ability to appease Cornyn and why am I drawing a blank? Tillis was designed so that we have a back door to come back down the pike and say, yeah, but we didn't mean this over here. And then what will happen is, now that he's AG, that it gives them the ability to spin it all the way that they want to, because he's AG now. And then and until we get back the House and Senate, I say when the House and Senate is back in control of Democrats, then, until then, he can run roughshod because they put a back door or a trap door in that allows them to, say that's not what we meant.
That's exactly right. Basically, the thing that he signed to sort of satisfy Tillis and Cornyn means basically nothing, because the settlement in the Southern District of Florida requires it to be signed by all parties, and none of the parties have signed this, which means that the settlement is still in full force and effect. And it has to, continue to be litigated. And as we all know, I mean, even if it did mean something, as soon as he's confirmed, he could wake up tomorrow and say, like, I was just kidding. I'm going to start the extra anti-weaponization fund. And this is a new fund. And this is not the same thing that I signed. So it's completely farcical. I think it basically gave Cornyn and Tillis political cover to vote for him. And I mean, this is very, by the way, par for the course of the incoming Attorney General. I'm sure your viewers and listeners know this, but he was the former personal defense attorney for the president. And so if you're thinking about your obligations, what every attorney has an obligation to their client to zealously represent them. And up until January 19th, 2025, Blanche was Trump's personal attorney. Yeah. And so the idea that you're just going to switch that off and say, actually, now I'm not going to continue to represent the interests of the person to whom I owe my entire relevance, right? Like nobody would know who Todd Blanche was, but for his representation of the president. The entire reason he's in the attorney general's position, in fact, the entire reason most of the cabinet is in their positions, is because of their relationship to Donald Trump.
They're fealty.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Margaret, that you position it that way. The word, I always come to this word when I think about cases that are brought, standing. So standing in this case is relevant, and you'll walk us through this in a second. But also, as his defense attorney, when you talked earlier about knowing what was being brought forward with the initial suit, he knew that this was bogus. Or parts of it, I should say. Let me clean that up. Were probably bogus or right up against the line. And they peeked over to say, yeah, we can probably get away with filing this. I mean, am I off base there?
Yeah. I mean, he runs the Justice Department. He definitely knows how the Justice Department would have responded to this suit coming from any other person asking for billions of dollars for something that is outside of the statute of limitations and that has already been adjudicated. So he would definitely know. And this is, I just want to this is not an anomaly, as I know you know. About a year ago, we saw Todd Blanche meet with Ghislaine Maxwell. And basically just, to this day, I don't think anybody knows what he was thinking, but the heavy implication this time last year, the release of the Epstein files was at a fever pitch, and Trump's involvement was, sort of the center of every news cycle for days. And so then Deputy Attorney General Blanche goes out to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell, basically to clear the president's name. And the idea that a member of the Justice Department who was also President Trump's personal criminal defense attorney, would go do this is just absolutely wild. I can't overstate how crazy it is. To meet with somebody
that had already been convicted by a quote-unquote jury of that person's peers. It had gotten all the benefits of our legal system to be prosecuted the right way, to then have the assistant AG go in and have a conversation with that person. To what end? It was nothing to the benefit of the United States, frankly. It was to the benefit of one person, which is shameful, and we use a lot of words to describe it. But the one thing that I won't use to describe you is uninformed. Margaret, I love talking with you. I just every time I have this big smile because I know you're gonna do what is sometimes hard to do, which is to break down complicated stuff and make it easier, or as I said before, bite-sized pieces. How can folks follow you real quick as we wrap up today?
I have a principled stance against social media, unfortunately, but I am on, you can find me on Yale, and I always welcome people's emails. And I've been, doing a lot of media across different platforms. So I'm just always happy for people to follow any of that.
And to learn some of the things that will help them better understand some of the complicated things that we deal with when it comes to our legal system right now. Margaret, thanks for being with us. I'd love to have you back sooner than later so we can talk about what's going on in Iran, the Department of Defense, and just some general rule of law things that I think will probably be beneficial to all of our listeners. Will you be able to do that sooner than later?
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
All right. Margaret Donovan, thanks for hanging out with us on Choose Views this morning. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
See ya.
All right. Bye-bye. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Choose Views. All right, guys. Welcome back to Choose Views. If you are just tuning in, glad you're with us. I'm Richard Chew. And of course, we just had a great conversation with Margaret Donovan. She is one of the great voices right now, legal voices that you guys should check her out, check out her work. She also is a lecturer and law school at the Yale Law School. So she's not only one that practices and represents clients, but she also teaches. So it's kind of great that she's got both sides of that going. Someone else who teaches, and he's been referred to as the professor. I call, for the longest time, I called him professor of everything progressive. And it always puts a little bit of a smile on his face. That is none other than the host of the Thom Hartmann program, Thom Hartmann. Good morning, Thom, and welcome to Choose Views.
Hey, good morning, Richard. How are you?
I'm good, man. I got a big smile on my face. I'm talking to you. I've been smiling all morning. I talked to Charles Booker, who's running for Senate in Kentucky, Margaret Donovan, and I get to bring it home with you this morning. So it's great to hear your voice, man. Who killed the American dream, Thom? Who's responsible? Remember back in, was it the 90s when the movie Who Killed the Electric Car came out?
Yeah,
well, now,
I do.
Okay, so my wife and I were talking about this over the weekend, but your new book, Who Killed the American Dream? Talk to us.
Well, it was the Supreme Court, and this whole idea that corporations are persons and money is speech, so that billionaires can buy elections and big corporations can buy politicians, and so those politicians will then go in and destroy the union movement and cut back on Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and just basically ruin the American middle class. It all started in 1886, when a clerk of the court and a corrupt Supreme Court justice conspired to write something into a decision that wasn't actually said or made by the Supreme Court. And that little statement that corporations are persons that was in that 1886 Supreme Court case just kind of sat there like a hand grenade until it got activated in 1978 by Lewis Powell of Lewis Powell Memo, who had been put on the Supreme Court in 72 by Nixon. And he wrote a decision in a case called Bellotti, First National Bank versus Bellotti, which said that corporations definitely are persons and they have rights under the Constitution. And that was the foundation then, and it was a 5-4 decision, all Republican appointees. And that laid the foundation for Citizens United, but that also laid the foundation for the Reagan Revolution, basically. And that was the beginning of the end for the middle class. We went from 2/3 of us being in the middle class with a single paycheck in 81 to today, where it could be as low as actually a third. I'm going to talk about that on the air today. And it takes 2 paychecks. So, we've had according to Rand Corporation, $70 trillion in wealth since 1981 has been transferred from the pockets and homes and retirement accounts of working class people into the money bins of the top 1%.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that the Supreme Court has had that much impact, yet we can't make some systematic changes to how the Supreme Court is designed and laid out. Are you I know from listening to your show where you stand on this, but talk with us about where you see we have could be with an expansion of the Supreme Court that mirrors the why do I get this wrong? The district courts.
Well, first of all, the district courts have to operate under rules of ethics that would have caused Clarence Thomas not to be able to vote. In both the cases of the George W. Bush presidency in 2000, when the court handed him the White House, and Citizens United. So there's that. I mean, that's probably the biggest part of it, is that the Supreme Court recognizes no genuine enforceable code of ethics. And so these guys are constantly ruling on cases in which they own stocks in the companies and they have personal interests and, all that kind of thing. It's also, we're seeing the result of a 50-year campaign funded by right-wing billionaires to stack the court specifically for this purpose, to turn America from a functioning social democracy into an oligarchy. So, I mean, if from the 1880s, the beginning of the real serious beginning of the Industrial Revolution until 1981, worker pay and productivity, which continuously improved because of automation, tracked each other. They were they were kind of one-to-one.
Yep.
And in the 1980s, suddenly productivity kept going up and worker pay just flatlined, and has for 45 years. And the result is that if workers right now were being paid based on what they were paid in 1980 in terms of productivity, the average income in America would be around $100,000. And if the minimum wage had simply tracked inflation since '64, it would be just a little less than $15 right now. In both cases, twice of what they are. And that's because 45 years ago, people had a lifestyle that, they had twice as much income as they do right now. You can go back and do the math.
And this is the thing that there's three things I want to make real quick. Then I've got to ask you this question. One, if that happened, I say all the time, people talk about let's increase taxes, let's tax the wealthy, et cetera. I think we have to do both. And you've said this so many times. Yes, we need to change the tax code across the board so that creates some of the pre-Reagan tax bases that we have, one. But at the same time, we increase taxes all day long, but if we don't increase wages and compensation, I'm not just saying the minimum wage, but compensation for everyday folk, then we only really get one rail of the track working in the favor of all of our democracy. We have to do both of those things because, to your point, yes, if we had matched those numbers along the way, that growth, we'd have actually a wealthier class of the super wealthy. They just don't get that, maybe because they don't want to get it, because they don't want a level playing field. That's been my suspicion for a long time. They don't want a level playing field. But if more people were paid better, they'd have more money because of the virtue of us being a consumer-driven economy. Am I crazy there or not?
No, it makes perfect sense. I think Jesus was right. Greed is a psychopathology, and one that destroys people. And we've got some really greedy people in this country. It's pretty friggin' amazing.
Yeah, it is. If you could wave a magic wand, Tom, you could change. I'm gonna pick two decisions: Buckley versus Vallejo, or Citizens United. Which would you magically erase first if you could rule the world in that space?
Well, Buckley kind of got the thing rolling in '76, and then Bellotti in '78, and those two decisions back to back kind of formed the foundation for Citizens United. But they still allowed for limits on campaign spending, and PACs were still outlawed and all that kind of stuff. So I'd go after Citizens United first. And I think that you could do it in a way that takes down Buckley and Bellotti as well.
Really?
These were all they're all based on that one premise, which is that 1886 case where, that I wrote this book about, where the Supreme Court justice and the clerk of the court wrote into the head note of the Santa Clara County decision that corporations are persons, and the court never actually ruled that. They just keep citing that head note. They cited that head note in Bellotti. They cited that head note in Citizens United. Without that head note, you undo the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's the premise of my book here.
Yeah. This next Congress, since we're talking about SCOTUS, and then we'll take a little bit of a break. This next Congress, the House goes to the Dems, and by stroke of another bit of political luck, the Senate does too. Let's just say that happens. Do you see the Democrats bringing in members of the Supreme Court to talk about some of the decisions, not the decisions that they've made, but some of the things that they've had, that they've, for lack of better words, been accused of or been caught in? I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Do you think that'll happen?
Like Clarence Thomas taking millions of dollars in gifts from Harlan Crow and then ruling in Citizens United in a way that allowed Harlan Crow to increase his political spending by 700% or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
Do you think the Democrats have the temperament, the stomach to do it? Or am I?
I sure hope so. Although I also, think that if it really looks like that's the direction things are going, that probably Alito and Thomas at the very least will resign. Yep. And let Trump replace them. Yeah,
I've been saying that for the longest time. Thank you for helping me not feel crazy that's probably where we're headed, that they will resign. Give him two more bites at the apple, which proves that, love her or hate her, Hillary Clinton was right years ago that this would happen. And so here we are. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll replace a couple of 70-year-olds with a couple of 30 or 40-year-olds.
Yep, sure will. Tom, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about some of the current stuff that's happening with RFK and Mitch and all the rest. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chu. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of me, Chu's Views, and Thom Hartmann from the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. If you're just tuning in, this is Chu's Views, and I'm Richard Chu. We're talking with Thom Hartmann, who is the host of the Thom Hartmann Program. Thanks for being with us this morning, Tom. I asked some listeners to send me some questions to ask you because I wanted to have a little bit of our audience participation. One of them that came to the top of the list is what your thoughts are about state election officials, secretaries of state, recorders, and all that, and how they can be a part of assuring some protection when it comes to what Trump has already said he will try to interfere directly or indirectly with the 2026 midterms. What do you think the states, the Democrats, that lead states, AGs, and all the rest can be doing or should be doing in that space?
Getting ready. They're going to mess. They're going to mess with this election. All you have to do is go back and look at the historical record, of what Trump tried to do in 2020, and Bill Barr and others like him refused to do. He wanted them to go. He wanted the FBI to go out and seize ballot boxes in Atlanta, and the FBI refused. I'm very concerned that a lot of really bad stuff is going to happen this fall, and it's going to be the state officials who will have to stop it.
Well, the state officials will have to stop it. Do you think that there will be a place? I guess that's the right word, where Congress decide, since it's technically at that moment will still, if the Dems win the House back and the Senate, but until they're actually sworn in January, Republicans still have control of Congress. But do you think that they will try to or attempt to not certify ballots that are coming from Democratic states?
Yeah, I do. And again, this is what Trump tried to do in 2020. And I fully expect that. I also would not be surprised if they refused to seat some Democrats who were elected, claiming that there was fraud in their races, and we got to wait and figure this out. And look at this: the new director of national intelligence just said, that maybe there was some Iranian interference. And I expect it all. I frankly, I really do. These guys are terrified. I mean, the people inside the Trump administration, several of them are looking at the possibility of going to prison. If there's a serious change of power in the United States. These guys have way overstepped. They've committed crimes in office, and they're they're not happy about facing the potential for accountability.
Yeah, it leads me to this next thought, which is Jay Clayton. I mean, when I listen to what his answers were and were not when during his hearing, I think about the goal of not the goal, but the responsibility of the DNI. So that's why I've been saying for weeks now that it's not going to be the attempt to try to say that something's happening locally or regionally or in a state. It's going to be their attempt to say, when this is why he had that press conference Trump did 2 Thursdays ago, that it's China and it's an outside entity that's tampering with our elections, because then that gives the DNI purview to then be able to try to step in and regulate what's happening in the fall elections. Is that, I mean, am I in the ballpark here?
Yeah, I know. I think that's an absolutely accurate analysis. The other thing that concerns me is that I think that Trump is hoping, I think he's trying to incite this, that Iranian proxies in the United States will pull off something like 9/11, and that will give him an opportunity to declare a state of emergency.
Yep. Even if it's someone that, and I hate to say this, but I'm thinking of going back to things like the Manchurian Candidate kind of thing, where they have a active cell do something that then gives him the ability to say we're in a state of emergency. We can't even have an election.
Exactly. It could be one of a disgruntled Proud Boy or something like that. I mean, Marius van der Lubbe, the 20-something guy who burned down the Reichstag-Gebäude, the parliament, the German parliament building in the late winter of 32, 33. I forget exactly when it was. I think it might have been January 33.
Right.
Yeah, or it was either December or January. It was right around then. Anyway, he was a Dutch communist. He was also mentally ill, and he was a kid, and nobody to this day knows for sure how he got inside the German Parliament building. But the Nazi offices were next door, and there was an underground tunnel that connected to the two buildings. And so, most of the people who, or a lot of your historians have concluded that the party itself, the Nazis, gave him access to the buildings, sort of the way that Trump gave his mob access to the Capitol building on January 6th. Although Trump just encouraged them to go step on the police, walk right over them. Van der Lubbe was let in, but it's the same strategy, and I'm concerned that they're ginning up enough outrage that somebody's going to try something that will give Trump the excuse he needs to invoke the remnants of the Alien and Sedition Act. Yeah. They declare a state of emergency.
Without a doubt, that's been on my mind for a long time. I think that we can't say that that's not going to happen, because we have enough evidence, and Tom has written about it in many ways and talks about it on his show, that these are the things that they will do with this corrupt power. They want to keep that power in their hands, and those who have been supporters of it, not just those that are elected officials, but the businesses and the money, the oligarchy that you talk so much about, wants to keep it in place too, because they're potentially, could be in the crosshairs of a Democratic Congress. Not just the politicians, but the money folks that have crossed the line or could be investigated. So we can't discount that things like that could actually happen, Tom. I know you know that already.
For sure.
It's the knife's edge, as you talk about so well. Help us through this situation with Mitch McConnell. I mean, is in your opinion, has Governor Beshear done all that he can do, or do you think that more should be being done in this space? I don't know what your thoughts are there.
I think the point has become kind of moot now, because we're after August 3rd. I mean, the whole thing was to get us past midnight last night, and so that there would be, there couldn't be a special election, and which would have been an opportunity for Thomas Massie to jump in, and that's I think that it's all about keeping Massie out. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's my sense of it.
Okay.
That Trump is genuinely afraid of Thomas Massie being in the Senate. And so, we'll see. But I'm guessing that probably today or tomorrow you're going to hear an announcement from McConnell's office that he's not coming back. But we'll see.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the Michigan election. I mean, obviously the primaries are in Kansas and was it Michigan, Missouri, I think Virginia, and Washington. Is that right? I think those are the primaries that are today.
I think so. Yeah, there's 5 or 6 of them today. The one in Michigan. This is going to be real interesting because you've got a candidate who has his ethnicity and his religion going against him and his name. In a state that has voted for Trump multiple times, and he's riding this populist wave that's happening right now that I think has frankly been building since 2008, and in reaction to both the Iraq War and Afghanistan War and the Bush housing crash of 2008, and. I think we've been in this populist moment ever since then, and people have been continuously saying, "Give us Bernie Sanders or somebody like that," and the Democratic Party keeps saying, "No, you can't have them." And now people are starting to drive this process from the bottom up, from the primaries up, and just saying to the party, "Screw you! I'm going this way," and. If Haley Stevens gets defeated particularly after the comment she made a couple of days ago, that people who keep bringing up the fact that, she's getting tens of millions of dollars from AIPAC and millions of dollars from billionaires and right-wing, corporations, if she still wins, I'll frankly be surprised. I think people are figuring it out, but they have dumped she's got like $60 million of outside money, and he's got like $2.5 million of outside money.
Yeah.
And so, it's going to be a fascinating race. Increasingly, you're reading these analyses that the Carville, Axelrod, Clintonista consultant class who have made themselves multimillionaires, off advising the party to keep sucking up to billionaires, are losing their edge and are being ignored by the people themselves. And, I think we're on the verge of a reformation within the Democratic Party itself. And, whether Ken Martin has the smarts and the ability to do anything about it is a whole nother question. But, but I really do. We saw this in the Republican Party. The Republican Party it was starting with Goldwater, just started slowly moving to the right, and it's been just steadily moving to the right until to the point now where you've got people, major Republicans. I mean, the largest Republican donor in the universe, doing Nazi salutes. I mean, that's where the GOP is at now.
There's no such thing as a moderate. There used to be a moderate Republican. There's no such. I don't see that at all because and largely because those who may have been the so-called moderate Republicans, whatever the definitions of that were, have acquiesced to what MAGA and what Trump wants. So they no longer they don't have a place to go home. In my casual.
No, they're on the outside looking in. They're the Lincoln Project. They're Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney and whatnot. And the Democratic Party, by going with progressives rather than corporate Democrats who take a lot of corporate money, is really just going back to the Democratic Party of old, back when the law said that you can't take corporate money and billionaire money. And people say they're moving to the left. The Barrosas are moving the party to the left. I don't see that. I see them moving the party back to where it used to be before Bill Clinton's presidency. I mean, Bill Clinton. This is also part of my book, Who Killed the American Dream, and that is that when Reagan came into office in '81, two-thirds of us were in the middle class, and a third of us had a union job, which is what provoked that. And Reagan knew that the major funding source for the Democratic Party was the unions. And so his goal was to defund the Democratic Party. And the way that you do that is by destroying the unions. And so he took us from a third of us being unionized down to 11% in 1992 when Clinton ran for president. And so Clinton was stuck. He couldn't get the money from the unions anymore. They were just, struggling.
Yeah.
And so he had really no choice other than to reach out to the billionaires and big corporations. And so the strategy that he came up with, the third way, the New Democrats, was well, okay, we'll just take money from the clean corporations, from the banks, and the insurance companies, and the white collar guys, these emerging internet companies and stuff like that. And we'll leave the dirty industries to the Republicans, let them go with oil and coal and stuff like that. And it started this neoliberal turn in the Democratic Party that shifted the Democratic Party to the right politically. It stopped any forward motion in bringing back unions or going for a national healthcare system or keeping college cheap or free. Just put an end to all that stuff. And now I think the Democratic Party is coming back to, the value systems of LBJ and FDR. I don't see that as moving to the left, even though the people talking about it call themselves Democratic Socialists. If they're Democratic Socialists, so was Eisenhower.
Yeah,
seriously.
No, I know, and that's the crazy thing about the labels, Tom. The labels are never fitting because they don't really have a baseline to say, well, where did you get that from? Do you know the origin of that? If you don't understand the origin of that, then how can you actually take on a label when you don't really know where it came from? And that's one of the faults that I think can come from the labels. Tom, it's always great to listen to you, as so many of us do across the country. We're blessed to have you as one of the voices that we all turn to. Thank you for hanging out with me this morning. I know it's early for you, but I appreciate you taking some time to let our listeners chime in to some Thom Hartmann. Thank you for that.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Richard. It's always great talking with you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great day today. And everybody tune into the Thom Hartmann program. Don't miss it. Thanks for being with us, Tom. Be safe. We'll talk to you soon. All right, guys, listen. Make sure you're checking out Tom today. As always, he's one of our big voices. And stay tuned for the Stephanie Miller Show. Make sure you catch Joan from 2 to 5 and Patty from 5 to 7 and all of our evening programs. I'm Richard Chu. Take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.